My name is Agnes Wright. I'm 82 years old, and I live alone in a modest apartment in a quiet corner of Maplewood Village, a small retirement community in the heart of Ohio. The days are peaceful now, the kind of peace I never thought I'd find. But peace has its price, and it took me a lifetime to get here. I wasn't always this calm, this composed. There was a time when my world was anything but peaceful. A time when the walls of our house, the quiet spaces I used to hide in, would echo with screams. Not from me, but from the woman I loved most in this world, my mother. The woman who always tried to protect me, even when she couldn't protect herself. You see, my father wasn't just a man who drank too much or lost his temper now and then. He was a monster in the guise of a father, a man who turned the home into a battlefield. But what hurt the most, what still cuts deeper than any scar, was not the way he hurt me. It was the way he destroyed my mother. For years, I lived in a fog of fear, the kind that wraps itself around your chest and squeezes until you can't breathe. The worst of it wasn't when I was the one getting hit. It wasn't even when I had to hide in the closet or run away to the neighbor's house, pretending everything was fine. No, the worst of it was watching my mother, my strong, beautiful mother, shrink under his control. Her body broken by his hands. Her spirit crushed by his words. I never thought she'd survive it, yet she stayed. Not because she loved him. God knows she didn't. She stayed because, in her heart, she believed that no matter what he did, her love for him could fix him. That somehow, if she just tried hard enough, everything could be made right. I remember the first time I saw the true extent of what he had done to her. I was 15. It was the middle of the night, and I woke to the sound of my mother sobbing. I crept down the hallway, my feet silent against the cold wooden floor, until I reached the kitchen. There she was, sitting at the table with a bruise blooming on her face like a sick flower. Her lip was split, and her hands shook as she tried to wipe away the tears. She was trying to make it look like she was fine. But she wasn't. She hadn't been fine for a long time. And that's when I heard it, the sound that would haunt me for the rest of my life. My father's voice, cold and empty, telling her, "You're nothing without me. You'll never survive without me. You owe me everything. Do you hear me, Agnes? Everything." That was the moment I realized that my mother was never going to be the same. That her fight for survival wasn't about us anymore. It was about her own will to live. And it was slipping away piece by piece. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw myself at him to make him stop. But I was just a girl. And he was a grown man who had already taken everything from her. What could I possibly do? It wasn't until I was older, married, and with children of my own that I fully understood what my mother had gone through. I had tried to block it out for years, to bury it in the back of my mind. But some things don't stay buried. They haunt you. They shape you. And now, as I sit here years later in the comfort of my retirement home, I realize I never fully confronted it. I never fully acknowledged how his abuse changed everything. Not just for me but for her. The woman who had sacrificed everything for me. The woman who believed she could fix him, and in the end was destroyed by him. But as the years pass and the clock ticks louder on my time here on earth, I can't stay silent any longer. Not when the pain of it all still lingers. Not when my children, my grandchildren, still don't understand what really happened in our home. They see me as the strong, quiet grandmother who smiles when she sees them. But they don't know what I carry. They don't know the weight of my mother's tears, of her quiet suffering, and of my own silent scream for justice. And so I will tell them. I will tell the truth. I will share the story that has haunted me for so long. The truth about the man who stole her spirit and the secret pain I've carried all my life. But not today. Not yet. Because the truth is, even after all these years, I'm still afraid. Afraid of what will happen if I speak. Afraid of the family I might lose, the ties that might break, the forgiveness I might never receive. It's funny, really, how time doesn't heal everything. People like to say that, time heals all wounds, they tell you, as though the days can magically erase the scars you carry. But what they don't tell you is that the scars don't fade. They just become part of who you are, woven into the fabric of your existence. You learn to live with them. To pretend they're not there, even as they hurt in the quiet moments. I learned to live with mine for years. I learned to smile at my children, to celebrate their birthdays and watch them grow into their own lives. I learned to attend family gatherings, to cook dinner for holidays, to do all the things a mother and grandmother should do. But behind the smiles, I was still that young girl in the kitchen, hearing my father's cruel words echo in my head, feeling my mother's sorrow press down on me like a weight I could never lift. It wasn't until my daughter, Maggie, asked me about my father one evening that the dam inside me finally cracked. We were sitting in my small, cozy living room, just the two of us, with a flickering light of a television playing quietly in the background. She had always been curious about the past, asking me questions I never really answered. But that night she asked something that stopped me cold. "Mom, what was Grandpa like?" Maggie's voice was light, innocent. But there was an edge to it, an underlying curiosity, as if she already knew something was wrong. I froze, the tea I was holding now cold in my hand. I had never told her the truth about my father. I had always kept that part of my life hidden, tucked away where no one could see it. But in that moment, as her eyes watched me with that familiar, gentle concern, I knew I couldn't hide it any longer. She had the right to know. They all did. But how could I explain it? How could I put into words the pain, the anger, the betrayal? How could I explain what it felt like to watch your mother suffer in silence, knowing there was nothing you could do to save her? He wasn't the man you think he was, Maggie. I began, my voice trembling as I set my cup down on the table. I never told you much about him, did I? Maggie shook her head, her brow furrowed in curiosity. You always just said he was a good man. That he loved us. I swallowed, the lump in my throat growing larger with each passing second. He wasn't good, Maggie. Not to me. Not to your grandmother. Not to anyone, really. Her eyes widened in confusion. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, the air feeling thick in my lungs. I mean, your grandfather hurt people. He hurt your grandmother. And he hurt me too. I could see the confusion in her eyes turning to disbelief. Grandpa. The man who was always so kind to us. I nodded slowly, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. He was different with us. He put on a mask for you and your brothers. But behind closed doors he was cruel. He used his power, his position, to control everyone around him. And he used me, used your grandmother, to build his own little world. Maggie sat back in her chair, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. But why didn't you tell us? I closed my eyes, my fingers trembling as I folded them together in my lap. Because, sweetie, I didn't know how. I didn't know how to explain it without breaking everything. Without losing everything. And when I did tell your grandmother, when I tried to make her leave him, she wouldn't. She couldn't. She thought if she stayed, if she kept trying, she could fix him. The silence between us was heavy, the weight of the truth settling in. Maggie sat there, processing what I had just said, her face pale. I wanted to tell her everything. To tell her the full truth, about the nights I spent hiding in my room, about the bruises on my mother's arms, the way she would apologize for everything he did, as though she was the one who had failed. But the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Did he hurt you too, Mom? Maggie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hit me like a punch to the gut. For so many years I had blocked out that part of my life, the part that I had never wanted to remember. The nights when I was too scared to sleep, the fear that gripped my chest when I heard his footsteps outside my door. The way he'd forced me to do things, made me believe that I was nothing without him. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. Yes, Maggie. He hurt me. But I never told anyone. I never told anyone what he did. The tears that I had kept at bay for so long finally broke free, streaming down my face. I had lived with this burden for so many years, and now, after all this time, it was finally spilling out. Maggie's hand reached across the table, her fingers gently wrapping around mine. Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I wiped my eyes, trying to compose myself. It wasn't your fault, darling. None of it was your fault. As I sat there, the weight of the truth hanging in the air between us, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the pain I had carried all these years. It was about breaking the silence. About telling the world, telling my family what had really happened in our home. And that's when I knew. The time had come for me to finally face everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I had kept my silence for too long, and it was time to break it. Time to tell my story. But what would happen next? Would my family understand? Would they still love me after hearing the truth? The days after my conversation with Maggie were a blur. I had finally said the words that had been locked inside me for so long, but the truth wasn't as freeing as I thought it would be. Instead, it felt like I had cracked open a door to a room I wasn't ready to enter, and now everything that had been hidden in the dark was spilling out. Maggie's reaction was the hardest part. I hadn't expected her to take it all in stride, but I had hoped for more understanding, more compassion. Instead, she was silent for days, retreating into herself, unable to process what I had told her. I couldn't blame her. How could anyone accept that their beloved grandfather, the man who had always been so kind to them, could have been capable of such cruelty? The hardest part, though, was seeing the distance growing between us. The guilt in her eyes, the way she would look at me, as if she was seeing me for the first time, was unbearable. I wanted to explain, to tell her how hard it had been for me, how I had lived with the shame for decades, but the words wouldn't come. How could I make her understand something so painful? How could I make her see that I wasn't the person I appeared to be? She had always looked up to me. I had always been the one who took care of her, who guided her through life. But now, with the truth out in the open, I saw a shift in her. She was no longer looking at me with admiration. She was looking at me with confusion, with questions I wasn't ready to answer. It wasn't just Maggie. It was the entire family. They had always seen me as the matriarch, the strong, dependable one. But now everything had changed. The illusions they had about me, about our family, had been shattered, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. 2 weeks passed, and Maggie still wouldn't speak to me. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I left messages, telling her I was there whenever she was ready to talk. But the silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. I was afraid I had lost her, afraid that telling the truth had been a mistake, that I had opened a wound that was too deep to heal. Then, one evening, as I sat in my living room staring at the empty space in front of me, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat, hoping it was Maggie, but when I opened the door I found my son Luke standing there instead. "Mom," he said, his voice heavy with something I couldn't place. "We need to talk." I invited him in, my hands trembling as I closed the door behind him. He sat down across from me, his eyes not meeting mine. "I've been talking to Maggie," he began, his voice low. "She's not doing well with everything you told her. She feels betrayed, Mom. She feels like you lied to her." I could feel the tears welling in my eyes. "I didn't lie to her, Luke. I couldn't tell her. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want her to see me as weak, as broken." Luke finally looked at me, his expression a mixture of sadness and frustration. "You didn't protect her, Mom. You didn't protect any of us. And now we're all paying the price for it. Maggie's scared. She doesn't know how to deal with this. And neither do I." I felt a pang in my chest, a sharp stab of guilt. I had spent so many years trying to protect my children from the truth, trying to shield them from the pain I had lived with, but in doing so I had only made it worse. I had let them live in a lie, a perfect illusion that was now falling apart. "I'm sorry, Luke," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you all. I thought that if I kept it hidden, if I kept pretending everything was fine, I could spare you the pain. But now I see that I was wrong." Luke didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at me, the weight of everything I had said hanging between us. Finally he spoke, his voice softer this time. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom. I don't know how to fix us." I felt a tear slip down my cheek. "I don't know either, Luke. But I'll try. I'll try to make it right, even if it's too late." The following days were filled with uncertainty. Maggie continued to avoid me, and Luke was distant, trying to figure out his own feelings. Understood. They were both processing the truth in their own ways, and I couldn't rush that. But the silence between us was killing me. Then one evening I received a text message from Maggie. It was simple, just a few words. "Can we talk?" I almost dropped my phone in shock. After everything, she still wanted to talk to me. I quickly replied, my fingers trembling. "Yes, of course. When?" She asked me to meet her at the park the next morning. When I arrived, I found her sitting on a bench, staring out at the small pond in the distance. She didn't look up when I sat down beside her. "Maggie," I said softly, "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to break your trust." She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to feel, Mom. I don't know how to process this. I look at you and I see the woman who raised me, the woman who always had it together. And now I see this. I see the truth, and it's not what I thought it was." I reached out, gently taking her hand in mine. "I know it's hard. I know it's a lot to take in. But I swear to you, Maggie, I never wanted you to suffer because of me. I thought if I kept it hidden you'd be safe. But now I see that the truth was always the only way to move forward." She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Mom. I don't know if I can understand it all. But I want to try." And in that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. We were starting to rebuild piece by piece. The following weeks were a delicate balance of hope and uncertainty. Maggie and I had started talking again, but it wasn't easy. Every conversation felt like stepping over cracks in a fragile bridge. Each word, each look, was a reminder of how far we had fallen. But the bridge, however fragile, was still there. And that's what kept me going, that faint glimmer of hope that we could cross it together. It wasn't just Maggie who was struggling. Luke was still distant too. He had stopped coming by as often, and when he did, his eyes would always look past me, as if I wasn't quite the woman he had thought I was. I didn't blame him. How could I? I had lied, hidden the truth, and now we were all paying for it. But I was trying. I was trying to rebuild, to show them that I was still their mother, still their rock. It wasn't easy. The weight of the truth hung heavy over us all, and I could feel the strain in every conversation. We were still a family, yes, but we were a family in pieces. One evening, after a particularly strained dinner, I found myself sitting in my favorite chair by the window, staring out into the quiet night. The moonlight bathed everything in silver, making the world feel peaceful, even though my heart was heavy with worry. Would we ever be okay again? Would my children ever look at me the same way? Just as I was about to lose myself in the quiet, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Maggie. She stood in the doorway, hesitant, as if she were still unsure about crossing the threshold. "Mom," she said softly. I turned to face her, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment where I would either begin to heal with her, or we would keep drifting apart. "Maggie," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm so glad you're here." She stepped into the room, her eyes searching mine, as though looking for something, anything that would assure her things could be fixed. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice quiet. "About everything. About Grandpa, about Dad. And mostly about you, Mom. I still don't understand it all. I still don't understand why you didn't tell us." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words, of her hurt. "I thought I was protecting you, Maggie. I thought that if I kept everything buried, I could spare you the pain. I was wrong." Her gaze softened slightly. "You were wrong, Mom. But I get it now. I understand why you stayed silent. It wasn't because you didn't love us. It was because you were trying to protect us in the only way you knew how." My heart ached. I wanted to say more, to explain everything, but words seemed so inadequate. How could I explain the years of fear and shame, the weight of the secret I had carried for so long? "Does that mean you're going to forgive me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Mom. But I'm willing to try. I want to try." I could see it in her eyes. The conflict, the love, and the fear. She wasn't sure how to process it all. How to reconcile the woman she had always known with the woman who had hidden such painful truths from her. But there was something there. Something that told me she wasn't giving up on me. She wasn't giving up on us. "I can't promise it will be easy, Maggie," I said, my voice breaking. "But I'm here. I'm ready to work through this. I'm ready to be the mother you deserve." She smiled, a small, tentative smile, but it was enough to make the tears rise in my eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. A bridge we could walk across together, one step at a time. A week later, Luke came over. He had been quieter than usual, and I knew he was still wrestling with his own feelings. But when he sat down across from me, I could see something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Softness. Understanding, maybe. Or at least a willingness to try. "Mom," he said, his voice low. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told us. I don't agree with everything. I don't know if I ever will. But I understand now that you were hurting too. And that you didn't want to drag us into your pain." I wanted to speak, to tell him how sorry I was, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "I'm sorry, Luke," I whispered. "I never wanted you to carry this. I never wanted you to know the truth. But you do now. And I'm here. For you. For all of you." He reached across the table and took my hand. "We'll get through this, Mom. But it's going to take time. I need time. We need time." The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was a quiet understanding, a space where we could heal, even if we didn't know exactly how yet. I spent the next few weeks trying to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, moments where the truth would surface, and we'd all have to face it again. But each day, each small conversation, brought us closer to a new understanding of who we were as a family. Maggie and Luke weren't the only ones healing. So was I. I was learning to forgive myself, to accept that I couldn't change the past, but I could shape the future. The weight I had carried for so long was beginning to lift, not because the pain was gone, but because I had finally let it out. And as I sat there in my chair, looking out at the world beyond my window, I realized something. The worst of it was behind me. It wasn't the abuse that defined me anymore. It wasn't the silence that had kept me bound. It was the truth that had set me free. The silence between us had been broken. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without pain. But we were talking, we were healing, and that was something I never thought would happen. The truth had come out, and although the aftermath had been nothing short of tumultuous, there was a glimmer of hope. But hope doesn't come without its challenges. A few weeks after our conversation, when things had calmed down somewhat, I decided to try something that I hadn't done in years. I reached out to my mother's old best friend, Evelyn. She had been a constant in our lives when I was younger, a witness to everything that had unfolded in our family, and someone who could shed light on the past, on the pain I had never fully understood. When Evelyn answered the phone, I was struck by the familiarity of her voice. It had been so long, and yet it felt like no time had passed. "Agnes," she said, her tone warm but cautious. "I've been waiting for this call. I know you've been carrying all that weight for years, sweetheart." I swallowed, fighting the emotions rising in my chest. "I didn't know where to begin, Evelyn. There's so much I never understood. So much I kept inside." There was a long pause, and then she spoke gently. "I know. And I'm so sorry you had to carry that alone. You were just a girl, Agnes. Your mother had her demons, and she did what she thought was best, even if it hurt you." Hearing her say those words, hearing her acknowledge the truth of what I had lived through, was like a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had always wondered if anyone else had seen the things I saw, if anyone else had noticed the destruction that came from my father's abuse. And now, here was Evelyn, confirming everything I had felt all these years. "It wasn't your fault," Evelyn continued. "You were a child. You were trapped in that house with all those secrets. just like your mother. And when she couldn't leave him, when she couldn't stop him, she thought she could protect you by keeping you safe in silence. She thought it was the only way. The weight of her words sank into me, like a long-lost truth finally being spoken aloud. It wasn't just my father who had done the damage. It was the years of silence, the years of pretending that everything was fine. My mother had believed that by keeping quiet, she was protecting me. But in doing so, she had allowed the poison to continue. "Evelyn, I don't know how to forgive her," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I don't know how to let go of everything that was taken from me." "You don't have to forgive her right away, Agnes," Evelyn replied gently. "You just have to allow yourself to heal. Forgiveness comes in its own time. And you've already begun that process. The truth is the first step." I closed my eyes, the tears threatening to fall once again. I hadn't expected the conversation to go this way, to bring up so much pain and so many memories. But it was the first time I had ever spoken about the abuse with someone who truly understood, someone who had seen it all, who knew exactly what I was talking about. "I don't know if I can ever truly forgive her," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I need to forgive myself. For staying. For letting it go on for so long." The days that followed were filled with reflection. Maggie and Luke both visited more often, but the tension remained. I could see it in their eyes. Luke was still struggling with the truth, still unsure of how to reconcile the man he had known with the monster I had revealed. Maggie too was struggling. She was trying so hard to understand, but the weight of the past still hovered between us, a silent wall we hadn't yet figured out how to break down. One evening after dinner I sat down with Maggie, just the two of us. She had been quieter than usual, and I knew she was still trying to process everything. But I had something I needed to say to her, something I needed to get off my chest. "Maggie," I began softly, "I know this has been hard for you. I know you're angry with me. I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be the mother you deserve." She looked up at me, her expression softening. "I'm not angry at you, Mom. I'm just confused. It's hard to understand how we could have lived in a house with so many secrets." "I know," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "I never wanted you to carry that burden. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was hurt you in the process." Maggie reached across the table, taking my hand. "It wasn't your fault, Mom. You were just a kid. And you didn't know how to fix it." I squeezed her hand tightly, grateful for her understanding. "I didn't know, Maggie. But I do now. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I kept from you." We sat there for a while, just holding hands, the weight of the past between us but no longer keeping us apart. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was a beginning, a small bridge between us, a step forward in the healing process. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in my living room, thinking about the road ahead. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be perfect. But for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. Small, fragile, but real. I had faced the truth. I had confronted the past. And now I had to live with it, move forward with it, and try to make things right. The road to forgiveness was still long, but I was willing to take the steps. For my children. For myself. Time didn't move easily for us in those days. Each hour felt like a battle, one where I had to face both the past and the future, the scars and the hope. Healing wasn't a straightforward path. I thought that once I had told the truth, once I had shared the burdens I had carried for so long, I would feel lighter, freer. But the reality was different. The weight of the past lingered, like shadows that refused to fade. Maggie and Luke were doing their best. They came around more often, their faces softer than before. But there was a distance, a space between us that I couldn't quite cross. Understood. They were processing, and it wasn't something they could just push aside. But every time we sat together, there was a silence, a hesitation, as though the truth had placed a barrier between us. Maggie, bless her heart, was the one trying the hardest to understand. She came over one evening, a rare moment when the air felt a little less heavy, and asked if we could talk. My heart ached with the thought that maybe, just maybe, we were making progress. We sat in the living room, the light from the lamp casting a soft glow on her face. "Mom," she said, her voice cautious but gentle, "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me. I get that you were trying to protect us, but I can't ignore the fact that we've been living in a lie for so long. It doesn't feel fair." I nodded, bracing myself for what I knew was coming. "I know, Maggie. It's not fair. It was never fair." She took a deep breath, her hands twisting in her lap. I don't know how to feel. Part of me feels like I should forgive you. I mean, you were just a kid and I know you did what you thought was best. But the other part of me is still so angry. Why didn't you tell us earlier, Mom? Why did we have to find out this way? The pain in her eyes made my chest tighten. "I didn't want to burden you, Maggie. I didn't want you to hate your grandfather. I thought if I kept it hidden, if I protected you, it would be easier. But I see now that I made everything harder. Sorry. I'm so sorry for keeping that from you." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, her voice cracking. "I just wish you had told us sooner. I wish you had trusted us." I reached out and took her hands, feeling her warmth. "I know, sweetheart. No. And I regret it every single day. I should have trusted you, trusted that you could handle the truth. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was keep you in the dark." For a long moment we just sat there, the air between us heavy with both love and sorrow. I could see that she was trying to forgive me, but forgiveness wasn't something that could be rushed. It would take time. And that was something I had to learn to accept. The next few weeks were filled with more conversations, more painful truths shared. Luke finally reached out, though his tone was still strained. He was struggling the most, unable to reconcile the father he had admired with the monster I had revealed. But he didn't turn away completely, and that in itself was progress. I didn't expect him to forgive me overnight, but I hoped that in time he would come to understand. And then, one evening as I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the quiet streets of Maplewood, I received a call from an old friend, Evelyn. She had been one of the few people who had witnessed my family's pain and never turned her back on us. She was a constant presence when my world was crumbling, and her voice, now on the other end of the line, brought me a sense of comfort. "Mabel," she said softly, "I've been hearing about what's been going on, about what you've shared with your family. And I just wanted you to know that I'm here for you. You're not alone in this." The kindness in her voice broke something open inside me. It was the first time in so long that I had felt truly seen, truly understood. "Thank you, Evelyn," I whispered, tears filling my eyes. "I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I've lost everything. My children, my dignity, my peace. I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it, Mabel. You just have to let yourself heal. And you have to let them heal too. The truth was the first step, but the rest of the journey is about healing. Together, apart, however it needs to happen." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of despair. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding on to, how much I had been trying to control. I couldn't fix everything. I couldn't change the past. But I could keep moving forward one step at a time. The weeks after that conversation with Evelyn were filled with quiet moments of reflection. I spent more time with Maggie and Luke, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the silence between us felt suffocating, when I could see the pain still fresh in their eyes. But there were also moments of progress. Small moments like when Maggie called to check in on me, or when Luke stayed for dinner without the tension in the air. The hardest part, I realized, wasn't the truth. It wasn't the pain of the past. It was the uncertainty of the future. Would we ever be whole again? Would we ever be the family we once were, before everything was torn apart? The answer, I knew, was not a simple one. Healing didn't come with a timeline. It wasn't something that could be fixed in a few weeks, or even a few months. But it was a process. And I had to trust that, in time, we would find our way back to each other. It's funny how the hardest part of healing isn't necessarily the pain. It's the waiting. The waiting for your heart to catch up with your mind. The waiting for time to do what it promises, to heal wounds, to soften the sharp edges of grief. But what they don't tell you is that time doesn't heal everything. Some things, like the hurt I caused my children, don't fade with the years. They linger in the quiet spaces between us, like ghosts that refuse to leave. I spent the next few weeks trying to put the pieces of my family back together. Maggie and Luke still visited, but things were different. The tension between us hadn't fully lifted, and every word, every glance felt like it carried the weight of the past. Understood. I was the one who had buried the truth for so long. I was the one who had kept them in the dark. But I didn't know how to make it right. It wasn't just the truth that had come to light. It was the years of silence, the years of pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. The lies I had told, even to myself, had built walls between me and my children. And now I was left with the ruins of those walls, trying to rebuild with nothing but fragments. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room, I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I found Maggie standing there, her face pale, her eyes tired. "Mom," she said, her voice strained. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in, my heart pounding in my chest. It had been a while since we'd had an open conversation. Most of our talks had been short and strained, filled with unspoken words. But tonight I could feel something in the air, something that told me this conversation would be different. We sat down at the kitchen table, the room heavy with unspoken tension. Maggie didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," she finally spoke, her voice trembling. "About Grandpa, about everything. And the more I think about it, the more I realize. I don't know who you are anymore, Mom." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I had known this moment was coming, but hearing her say it still hurt. "Maggie," I whispered, my voice cracking, "I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted you to see me like this." She shook her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and pain. "But you didn't just hide it, Mom. You let him hurt you. You let him hurt us too. And for what? To protect him. To protect us from the truth. You kept it all in, and now we're paying the price for it." I felt the guilt swell inside me, a wave that threatened to drown me. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I kept it hidden, if I pretended everything was okay, it would protect you. But I see now that all I did was keep you in the dark. She stood up, pacing the room, her fists clenched. "You don't get it, Mom. You don't get that we didn't need you to protect us from the truth. We needed you to be honest with us. We needed you to fight back. I don't understand how you could let him do that to you." Her words cut deep, deeper than anything I had ever felt. She was right. I had been silent for too long, hiding the pain to protect them, and in doing so, I had hurt them more than I could ever know. "I was afraid, Maggie," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I was afraid that if I spoke out, I'd lose everything. I thought I could protect you by keeping it hidden. But all I did was make you live in fear, too." She stopped pacing and turned to look at me, her face softening, though her eyes were still filled with tears. "But we can't heal if we keep pretending, Mom. We can't fix this if we don't face the truth together. I want to be able to forgive you, but I don't know how. I don't know where to even begin." I reached out to her, my hands shaking. "I don't know either, Maggie. I don't know how to fix this. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." She looked at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she sat back down beside me, her hand finding mine. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Mom. But I'm willing to try to." And in that moment, I realized that healing wasn't about an instant fix. It wasn't about immediate forgiveness or forgetting the past. It was about taking those first steps together, even when the road ahead was uncertain. The next few days were filled with more conversations, more tears, more attempts at understanding. Luke still hadn't fully come around, but Maggie and I were making progress. Slowly but surely, we were learning to communicate again, to share our pain without letting it tear us apart. But just as I was beginning to feel a sense of progress, the past came rushing back in a way I wasn't prepared for. One morning I received a letter from the family lawyer. It was from my father's estate, documents that I hadn't thought about in years. I hadn't even realized that he had left anything behind. The letter sat on my kitchen table for hours before I could bring myself to open it. When I did, I was met with a document stating that my father had left a portion of his estate to me and my children. It wasn't the money I cared about. It was the symbol of everything he had left behind. The inheritance, the legacy of the man who had caused so much pain. The anger bubbled up in my chest, threatening to overtake me. Why now? Why, after all this time, did he still have control over our lives? But I knew this was another test. Another challenge that life had thrown my way. I didn't know what to do with the letter. I didn't know if I could accept anything from him. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. I needed to decide once and for all if I was ready to fully sever the ties to my past and leave everything behind. The question was I ready? I sat in my kitchen, staring at the letter in front of me as if it were a physical weight pressing down on my chest. It was as if the envelope was a symbol of everything I had tried to outrun, everything I had tried to bury. The inheritance, my father's final act, sat there like a cruel reminder of the man who had taken so much from me. And now, in death, he was trying to hold on one last time, trying to control what little he had left of me. I had thought that once the truth came out, once I had shared my story with my children, once they knew everything, I could finally breathe easy. But here I was, still haunted by his legacy, by the things he had done. Even his death wasn't enough to free me from the chains he had placed on me all those years ago. But now the decision wasn't just about me. It was about my children, about Maggie, about Luke. I needed to decide if I was going to let my father's final gift be another burden, or if I could finally let it go, once and for all. Maggie! I called out, my voice sounding small in the empty house. I hadn't shared the news with her yet, but I knew I couldn't keep it from her. Not now. Not after everything we had gone through together. She walked into the kitchen, her expression soft. She had been helping me more lately, trying to bridge the distance between us. She could see I was struggling with something even before I spoke. "What's wrong, Mom?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I slid the letter across the table to her, watching her eyes flick over the words. Her gaze softened, and she took a deep breath. "This is from Grandpa's estate." I nodded, swallowing hard. "It's his final act of control, Maggie. I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to carry this anymore, but I don't know if I can just ignore it either." She glanced at the letter again, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper. "I understand, Mom. Really do. This is a decision you don't have to make alone." I looked at her, the tears threatening again. "But it's more than that. He's been gone for years, but his influence is still here. This letter is just another reminder of how much damage he did. And now it's like he's still trying to control me from beyond the grave." Maggie reached over and took my hand, her grip firm. "I don't think you're still under his control. Not anymore. You're free, Mom. We're all free. But it's okay to let yourself feel conflicted. It's okay to be angry." The anger inside me burned hot, sharp. I should feel free, Maggie. I should be able to just throw it all away, but I can't. I don't know how. I don't know if I ever will. She squeezed my hand, her voice gentle but steady. "You don't have to decide all at once. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to keep carrying this burden alone." I looked at her, her words sinking in. The last few months had been full of small victories, tiny steps in the right direction. But this was a test. Could I finally let go of my father's control? Could I truly be free? It wasn't until a few days later, after more reflection, that I made my decision. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of the past. I couldn't let my father's legacy dictate my future. So, I did the only thing that felt right. I contacted the lawyer and told him to donate the inheritance to a charity, one that helped abused women and children find safety and support. I don't know why that felt like the right choice, but in that moment it did. It felt like taking something that had been tainted by my father's cruelty and turning it into something good. Something that could help someone else. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming power over my life. It was about doing something good with what he had left behind, something that had meaning. I told Maggie about the decision later that night, and her smile was all the reassurance I needed. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said softly, hugging me tightly. "This is the kind of thing that changes lives. It's going to change you too." The next few weeks were full of more small victories. Maggie and Luke, though still struggling in their own ways, were starting to heal. We spent more time together, each day a little less heavy than the one before. The tension between us was still there, but it was fading like the last traces of a storm. And then, one evening, as we sat together in the living room, Maggie said something that made my heart swell. "I've been thinking, Mom," she said, her voice thoughtful. "You've shown me what real strength looks like. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about being honest. It's about fighting for what matters, even when it hurts." I reached over and took her hand, my eyes filling with tears. "Maggie, I'm so sorry for everything. For all the pain I caused you. For not being the mother you deserved." She shook her head, a gentle smile on her face. "You're here now, Mom. That's what matters." Strange, really, how the heart works. It can break so easily, shatter into 1,000 pieces, and yet, over time, it begins to heal. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But slowly. One day, you wake up and realize that the weight you've been carrying doesn't feel as heavy. The burden isn't gone, but it's no longer drowning you. You learn how to live with the scars, and in some ways, those scars become a part of you, a reminder of what you've survived. For the first time in years, I began to feel like myself again. The pieces of my life were still scattered, but they were starting to fit together. Maggie and Luke were coming around. Slowly but surely, they were finding their way back to me, to the mother they had known before the truth came crashing into our lives. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. There were still hard days, moments when the silence between us grew thick again, when the past reared its ugly head. But for the most part we were moving forward. And that was more than I had dared to hope for. I spent my days in a kind of quiet peace, a peace I hadn't known in a long time. I volunteered at the local women's shelter, helping other women who had been through pain I understood too well. I tried to give back, to help heal others in ways I couldn't heal myself. But that's the thing about healing. It never really ends. It's an ongoing process, one day at a time. And then one evening, I received a call from Maggie that shook me to my core. "Mom," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. "I need to talk to you. It's about Dad." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't heard from her like this in weeks. And I could tell something was different. I could hear the tremor in her voice, the way she was struggling to hold it together. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice trembling with concern. "I don't know," she replied. "But I think it's time we have a real conversation about him. I don't think I can move forward without understanding everything." I didn't need her to say more. I knew what she meant. After all these years, after everything we had been through, Maggie was finally ready to confront the man who had done so much damage to our family. She wanted answers. She wanted closure. And as I sat there, the weight of her words sinking in, I realized something. So did I. The next day we sat together in my living room, the same room where we had shared so many conversations, so many moments of joy and pain. But this time the air between us felt different. Heavy. It was the weight of history. The weight of all the unanswered questions that had been left lingering for too long. Maggie looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to find the pieces of the story she had never been told. "I don't even know where to begin, Mom," she said softly. "There's so much I don't understand. I don't understand why you stayed with him, why you let him hurt you for so long. I don't know why you kept it from us." The questions came fast and sharp, each one like a needle poking at my heart. I wanted to scream, to apologize, to explain every single thing that had led me to stay. But how could I explain something so complicated? How could I make her understand what I couldn't even fully understand myself? "I was afraid, Maggie," I said, my voice breaking. "I was afraid that if I left, I'd lose everything. I thought I had to stay for you, for your father, for our family. But I see now that I was wrong. I should have left. I should have protected you." She shook her head slowly, her voice full of disbelief. "But why, Mom? Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell me?" I felt the tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back. "I thought I was protecting you, Maggie. I thought I was sparing you from the pain. I didn't want you to see me as weak. I didn't want you to hate your father." There was a long silence as Maggie processed what I had said. Then finally she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "I know you were trying to protect me, Mom. But hiding the truth only hurt us more. I don't know if I can ever fully understand it, but I want to. I want to understand why you stayed, why you let him do that." I looked at her, my heart breaking with the weight of her words. She was right. I had hidden the truth from her, from everyone, for so long. And now, here we were trying to make sense of it all. "I stayed because I thought it was the only way to keep our family intact," I whispered. "But I see now that I was wrong. I see now that I should have fought harder. I should have fought for myself, for you, for all of us." Maggie reached out, her hand resting on mine. "It's okay, Mom. I'm not angry at you. I don't think I could ever be. But I need you to be honest with me. I need you to let me in." And in that moment, I realized that healing didn't just mean telling the truth. It meant letting go of the past. It meant allowing myself to forgive, not just my father but myself. It meant opening up to Maggie, to Luke, and to the family that I had kept at arm's length for so long. The conversation didn't end in closure. It didn't end with a happy resolution. But it was a start. It was a step forward. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. I spent the next few days thinking about what Maggie had said. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about how we could rebuild our future piece by piece. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't have everything figured out. But we had each other. And that, for the first time in my life, was enough. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet change. The conversations, the raw emotions, the confessions. Everything we had gone through in the past months had brought us closer, even when it felt like it was tearing us apart. We had faced the darkest corners of our family's history, and while we didn't have all the answers, we had something even more valuable: understanding. Understanding each other, understanding the past, and, most importantly, understanding that healing takes time. Maggie and I spent more time together. Our talks were no longer heavy with unspoken words. We didn't have to tiptoe around the truth anymore. We faced it and we learned how to live with it. The healing process wasn't linear. Some days were better than others, and some days the weight of everything still felt too much. But with every step we moved closer to peace. One evening, Maggie sat across from me in the living room, her smile soft but real. The tension that had once lingered between us had faded, replaced by something deeper. A bond that had been fractured had started to heal, stitch by stitch. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said, her voice steady, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've been so strong even when you didn't think you were. You've done the hardest thing. You've faced the truth. And I'm so proud of you for that." The tears I had been holding back for so long began to spill, but this time they weren't filled with sorrow. They were tears of release, of acceptance. "I never thought I'd hear that from you, Maggie," I said softly, my voice shaky. "I never thought I'd see the day when we'd both get to this point." She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "We're not done, Mom. There's still a lot of healing to do. But we're going to get there. Together." And for the first time in my life I believed her. It was a few months after that, when things had settled into a quiet rhythm, that I got the phone call from Luke. He had been quiet for so long, and I had feared that we would never be able to bridge the gap between us. But that evening, when I heard his voice on the other end of the line, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't realized I had lost. "Mom," he said, his voice strained but warm. "I've been thinking a lot about everything and I want to try. I want to be there for you, for us. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to work on it. I just need to figure things out." I felt the tears well up in my eyes once more. "I'm here, Luke. Whenever you're ready, whenever you need me. And that was it. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it was a step toward healing the final cracks in our family. We didn't have all the answers, and there were still difficult conversations ahead. But we were trying. We were learning to understand, to forgive, and to love again. One quiet afternoon, as I sat in my chair by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something profound. The past would always be a part of me. It would always be a part of my family's history. But it no longer had control over me. No longer defined me. The truth had set me free, not because it erased the pain, but because it allowed me to move forward, to live authentically. The weight of the silence had been broken, and in its place, there was room for healing, for hope, and for redemption. And as I watched the world outside, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready. I had finally come to terms with my past, and that was all I needed to start living fully in the present. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It wasn't easy, but we made it through. If my story has helped you, if it has inspired you to face your own truth and find your own peace, I invite you to stay connected. I'm here to share more, to keep walking through this healing process together. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stories and inspiration. Let's continue this journey of healing together.